Our reading this morning comes from the book of Ecclesiastes, and I'll be reading from chapter 3, verses 9 to 13, and this is from the New Living Translation. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Welcome everyone. It's good to be with you here again today. If you're wondering why Steve's not here this morning, he's actually over in New Plymouth preaching at the North Point Church there, so you can be in prayer for him today. And we're in the middle of our series called Mere Breath, and it's a search for meaning in the book of Ecclesiastes. Very interesting book of the Bible that's quite different to every other book in the Bible, but it is in our Bible. It is in this collection of books that God has given us that we call the Bible. And so we can actually find some interesting things in there that help us on our journey in life as well. And today's sermon is called The Burden of God, which comes from the verse that was just one of the verses that was just read out. Oh my goodness. Brendan, I forgot to get you to read the first 8 verses. Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, I know. Might just see if we can put it to tune. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. That might work, eh? A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to hear, a time to love, a time to weep. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to burn, build up, a time to break down, a time to dance. Really? I don't know how to do that. A time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to love, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. So there might be one more verse, yeah. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. That could be a hit, right? Or maybe it's just for the birds. Yeah, really interesting little section, right, in the Bible. A famous poem, really, that stands alone as a reflection on the diversity of life's lived experience. And you've got these sort of opposite pairs of a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, and it goes on. These lines, they express what someone's called the juxtaposition big word, right? Of life, of great joys and sharp griefs. So what is the teacher who's telling us these things, what is he trying to say? I don't think he's saying that we should expect for every single one of these things to happen in every single one of our lives. The good balancing the bad. In fact, to be honest, there's only two things I think that we can be sure of. He mentions one of them, death, and the other one apparently is taxes. Now, he's not saying that we will cry as much as we laugh, or that we are allowed to kill someone as long as we heal someone else. And there's certain people like me that shouldn't be let loose with growing plants. And as I kind of mentioned before, I can't dance also. And neither do these verses give us permission for a Department of War. In fact, the last sort of line there of the Birds version is a time for peace, I swear it's not too late. It was sung in the 60s as a plea for world peace. So what is the teacher saying? I think he might be saying that at different times in our lives, our lived experience as humans will cover the gambit of experience, circumstance, action, emotion. There'll be times when we can go, yeah, isn't the Lord being good to me? And I can lift up the song. And there'll be other times when that's really hard because stuff happens and we might be trying to run away from living some of the difficult things that we face. Yet we cannot deny that they are part of real life. And that is how life is. So this poem really reminds me of a scene from a movie in Forrest Gump that we're going to see right now. My mama said that life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So as we think about our lives, what life chocolate are you receiving at the moment? Is it an experience that you are savouring? Enjoy it. If it is a time of struggle and there's things that are really, really hard in life, the teacher encourages us that everything has a season of limited duration. That means that this too will pass. We often don't know what life chocolates we're going to get. There is so much in our life that is out of our control and our understanding. And we don't decide to speak or to keep silent out of nothing. We don't love or hate just for the fun of it. Something happens that makes one or another of these responses appropriate at that moment in time. And the practical wisdom of the teacher encourages us to respond appropriately at that moment of time. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. Yet even in the light of the poem, he says in verse 9, what do people really get for their hard work? There are times for everything in life, but we struggle to see the bigger picture. I'm going to ask you to stop for a second and think back to last week, because this kind of connects us back to our themes from chapter 1 and chapter 2. Steve took us through a bunch of different things that we use in our life to try and create meaning. We can work hard to achieve things in life. We can seek enjoyment. We can even be really smart and seek wisdom. Maybe that for us is a successful business or getting to the pinnacle of our career. But even if that happens, sometimes we feel a bit unfulfilled. We can have all the gadgets and apps and clothing we need and more, and yet still want that next shiny thing. We can have family and friends and even church around us and still feel alone. We can be well educated and have an answer for everything except maybe the questions in life that really matter. Now, none of these things are in of themselves bad. In fact, they're probably what many of us would consider the good life. But at the end of the day, when it all boils down to the end of a life, they lack ultimate meaning. They are like mere breath and chasing the wind. And we are left asking, is there more to life than this? So we come to verse 10. I have seen the burden God has placed on us, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. As I said before, the title of our sermon comes from this idea of the burden of God. But it's quite an interesting word because it can mean burden, it can also mean busyness or business. So like when you get to translate this thing, you're going, is it a burden that God gives us? Is it things to be busy with that God gives us? Or is it just a regular life of human activity that God is talking about? And the answer is yes to all three. One commentator says the teacher is interested in the business of human activity itself and also in the business of the task of understanding the human activity and experience. Gaining understanding is concentrated work, but the success it brings is limited. Yet God gave human beings a double task: the general human activity and the challenge of trying to understand it. Whew, it's a pretty philosophical, isn't it? How does it relate to you and me? Well, I don't know. There are probably some people here that might feel a little bit trapped in the busyness of life. Perhaps it's study happening with exams coming up. Perhaps it's that kind of work, eat, sleep, repeat life that we live. Perhaps it's with kids, how we don't get as much sleep as we usually do, and the routine is difficult, and we're too busy for the big questions. Or maybe you're a bit afraid about what would happen if you actually got off the treadmill and had to think about some of those things, and we push down the big questions. The teacher's challenge is not to be so busy that we don't have time to reflect on the meaning of life, that we should take time to face at times the big questions. And here's the wrestle. From what I have found, this is a reflection by Sister Teresina, who worked alongside Mother Teresa. From what I've found, there is just too much noise in modern life. And because of this, many people are afraid of the silence. As God speaks in silence, this is a big problem for those who search for God. Many young people, for example, they don't know how to reflect. I'd say old people too, and in between people too. They just act instinctively. So my challenge to us all this week is to actually find some space, to recognize the presence of God in our world, to recognize His presence in our lives, to even allow ourselves to ask some of the big questions like, is life meaningless? Are we but mere breath? Or is there more to life than this? Because struggling with life's questions is a part of being human. Now, it's not without reason that in recent times the teacher has been called the first existentialist. Existentialism is humanity trying to discern meaning from the world, but it is a meaning that is fragile and that is prone to break down, leading to a sense of meaninglessness and despair. The teacher describes this human leading towards the divine, this human leaning towards what's beyond us in our physical lives. And he suggests that humans have a capacity to stand and look back at our own lives, a capacity to look at the totality of their own lives. And this is something that distinguishes us from animals. I mean, as far as I know, there aren't whales around there sitting in the ocean going, oh, I'm just having a whale of time. And I've never heard a sheep reflecting on his tendency to always be following other sheep. I don't think he's sitting there going, man, I'm such a sheep. I don't think he's having this. If anything, he might be going, oh, grass, grass, grass. But apart from that, we know that nothing's really happening in that part of the brain. But we have the capacity to reflect, yet we still only see in part. And I kind of love the way the teacher puts it there in verse 11. God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people can't see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. Now, this is where we say, well, we actually have a little bit of an advantage over the teacher. Right? He lived in that time we call BC, before Christ. And we live in this time called AD, which I used to think meant after death, but actually means the year of our Lord. It relates to his birth. Anyway, that's an aside. We have this advantage because with the resources of the whole Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, we are able to see time bookended by creation in Genesis and a new Jerusalem in Revelation. Unlike the teacher, we know that history is actually going somewhere. And we have heard the good news of Jesus, which is central to this. The overarching story in which we can find meaning, that Jesus died, rose from the dead, so that we too can live knowing that resurrection will be possible for human beings like us who have put our faith in Jesus. If we know this person and have a relationship with this person called Jesus, we know that death is not the end. Even so, as was mentioned when we first arrived this morning, the world seems to be in a huge mess right now. Not necessarily any worse than it's been for a while, but it seems to be in a bit of a mess. Politics here and across the world seem to be very polarized, and we have seen that this week lead to violence. And violence seems to be winning in many places over peace. Even those of us that follow Christ and have read the end of the book can sometimes wonder if my life and my choices actually make any difference. But he has planted eternity in the human heart. He has made everything beautiful in its time. And perhaps it just takes one amazing sunrise or sunset to lead us to surrender to a sense of awe in our Creator, because God has set eternity in our hearts. Now, yes, we can be moved by music and beauty and joy and not turn to the Creator, but in the end, nothing else truly satisfies. The words of St. Augustine that are made famous through his Confessions speak to me again and again. You have made us for yourself, O Lord. You have made us for yourself. And our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. So the teacher concludes in verse 12 and 13, there is nothing better than to be happy, to enjoy ourselves as long as we can, and people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for they are gifts from God. Despite being mere breath, we are encouraged to accept life as a gift from God. Joy and pleasure come not from getting stuff, but they come from the journey itself, the life that God has given us. Henry Nouwen has once said, we tend to stay away from mourning and dancing. Too afraid to cry, too shy to dance, we become narrow-minded complainers, avoiding pain and also true human joy. While we live in a world that is subject to the evil one, we belong to God. So let us mourn and let us dance. Jesus put it this way in John 10:10, I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. Do you have life? Do you have it to the full? I would suggest we can only find that sense of fulfillment and fullness in Jesus. And it's not that Jesus is a magic genie that comes out of the bottle and makes the seasons change quickly so that we're not having times of struggle. No. But he does make a huge difference in my life. And he will make a huge difference in your life. For he makes everything beautiful in its time. Earlier I said I would challenge us to find a time in our week to reflect on some of these big questions. And just like a good teacher, I'm giving you the opportunity right now. So you don't even have to go away and do it as homework. You can do it now. Here are some questions that come directly from the chapters of Ecclesiastes. Maybe one of them jumps out at you and is worth reflecting on. What lasting gain comes from working hard? Why is life so fleeting and elusive? They're not easy questions. What happens after death, and does it level everything? Is there true justice in the world? Why can't we fully grasp God's plan even with eternity in our hearts? And I'm going to give us 4 minutes to think about one of those questions or more of those questions as we also listen to a song that encourages us to keep searching and to allow God to help us in that search. So let's just take this time to be quiet, to listen, to consider, to pray.